is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Wednesday in April. We're about 36 hours away from the start of the NFL draft. The Ravens holding the 14th overall pick. And on today's episode, we've been doing a lot of draft podcasts lately, Jonas. We've been potting the people into oblivion. We have Gordon McGuinness, formerly of PFF, longtime friend of the podcast. For the third straight year on, we are going to be doing a 7-round NFL Ravens-focused mock draft. They come in with 11 picks. We'll see if we'll make all 11 or if we'll make some trades as we go along. Gordon McGuinness, of course, the creator of Ravens in 5 Substack and YouTube channel. Gordon, thanks so much for joining in this silliness for a third straight year. You are the one who probably produces the most mock drafts of anybody on this podcast, and probably me and Jonas combined.
Yeah, I'm going to tell myself that this is going to be my last 7-round mock draft, and I'm going to prove myself to be a liar about 30 minutes after we get done.
It's awesome. We love tapping into Gordon's knowledge every year. We are going to start that mock draft in just a few minutes, but Jonas, we have to start with the news that was reported Tuesday morning by ESPN's Adam Schefter. It's the first time we've gotten any news on Nnamdi Madubuike since week 2 of the 2025 season, and it is that the Ravens Pro Bowl defensive tackle underwent neck surgery last week that left doctors believing that he will be able to resume playing this season. This would be a massive bit of news, considering we haven't heard anything about Nnamdi Madubuike in quite a while. John Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, Eric DeCosta, Sashi Brown, everybody who has been asked about Nnamdi Madubuike has avoided the topic, has said it is a book yet to be written and that Nnamdi will address it on his own terms. So for this report to come out a few days before the draft, certainly it is exciting for Ravens fans. Just the idea that after all of this hard work that Nnamdi clearly appears to be putting in on his Instagram, from what we've heard from the Ravens coaching, the strength and conditioning staff, that it could be paying off and that Nnamdi Madubuike, after neck surgery, could return to playing in 2026.
Yeah, there's just so much we don't know about this, Paul. It's frustrating to kind of get your arms around it. I don't think the timing of this was coincidental. I think obviously 2 days before the draft maybe gives the Ravens a little bit more smoke screen around what exactly their intentions are in this draft. I am hoping for the best for Nnamdi and for the Ravens and just how this thing plays out. But man, just spent some time yesterday after this news came out, like looking for basically recent examples of guys coming back from neck surgeries or spinal surgeries and seeing how the final part of their career played out. And it's not that promising. Like I think the 50th percentile outcome for Nnamdi's career going forward is drastically different from the 50th percentile outcome for Nnamdi previous to this neck injury. It doesn't mean that, modern science hasn't made leaps and bounds since like Leighton Vander Esch got hurt and Michael Irvin got hurt, in the late 90s. But it does make you extremely wary of what exactly like the next stage in Nnamdi's career could be, because he is playing a position that is in the line of fire. And like the one thing that coaches tell you to do as a offensive lineman, defensive lineman, is to like not lead with your neck. And that is just a occupational hazard for those guys in the trenches. So I'm hoping that this is, kind of a modern medical miracle for Nnamdi, and that he's able to come back and recapture his old form. He certainly looks like he's in the best shape of his life. But I do think that what Eric said last week about how whatever Nnamdi's status is doesn't really affect us that much in terms of what they're going to do in the draft, it does ring true to me, just because of everything that is kind of fraught with this situation.
I do think the timing could just be the fact that he just had the surgery last week. I tend to be a little bit skeptical as to, I'm not so hardened to think that the Ravens just tried to get this out there right before the draft in order to use this bit of news as a way to scare off other teams or to get other teams interested in trading. I mean, I think that I take them at their word in this instance that he just had the surgery last week. It is crazy that he had this surgery so much later than the injury itself, and that he was working out before this kind of surgery. One of our many questions that we'll have for Namdi one day, and for DaCosta, if he's able to talk about it, Minter, is what kind of surgery, why it took so long for him to get the surgery. The first step is just getting him back on the field. I mean, if he can just be back on the practice field, if he can show up to mini camp or training camp, as soon as that injury happened and he was ruled out for the year, I think all of our minds went to, this is worst case scenario, and his career could be over. So for him to just get back on the field, obviously we'll see if he can return to his former Pro Bowl status. But if he can be back there on the field, and if he can play in regular season games come September or some point during the season, I think you have to consider that a win on some level. Jonas, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to open the floor to Gordon and just how he feels that this might open the way to the Ravens and what they do draft wise.
Yeah, I think
it's.
I think it's interesting. I don't think there is a defensive tackle worth taking at 14.
Sure,
but I do think it's interesting if they go offensive line in round 1. Does a Peter Woods, does a Caleb Banks fall to them in the second round? And then there's guys later on. Like, I think this is a nice draft to try and grab someone similar to Aeneas Peebles from last year. Like, you have the kid from Southeastern Louisiana, Caleb Proctor. You have Landon Robinson from Navy. Like, guys who are undersized and just might be too small for the NFL, but do have enough pass rush juice as 3-tech guys later in the draft. So it's just not a draft whereby there is a dominant guy you can take early that fills that need.
Yeah. Well, let's get into our mock draft here. I'm going to bring up the screen. This is one of those episodes that I would recommend people watch on Facebook, YouTube, and X. You can also listen to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. But this kind of gives you a view of who the players are available to us, who goes off the board before we pick. And to be clear, we are trying to not only predict what the Ravens will do, but also offer what we would do if we were Eric DaCosta in this situation. Jonas, do you have any thoughts about the overall draft strategy here and what you are taking into account as you prepare to make these picks?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of open the floor to you guys and get your thoughts on whether the Ravens will kind of change their approach to drafting on a big picture level. Like, are we going to see them target older prospects at maybe some of these key spots instead of younger guys? Obviously, they prefer to get 20-year-olds, 21 years old in the round 1, round 2 range. Are they going to take more chances on guys with maybe medical red flags, character red flags? Are they going to target win now players instead of developmental players? And then I think just maybe most ambiguously, like, are we going to get any clues about what it means to kind of play like a Raven under Jesse Minter? You know, he talked, I think, a couple times now about how there is this sense of looking for a new modern age way of basically evolving that tradition. And I'm a little bit skeptical that we're going to get a lot of signals amid the noise of the draft, because you're just looking for guys who can help your team in 2026. But I just wanted to know what you guys thought maybe could be a continuation of Ravens draft trends under Eric DaCosta, or a stark change and a very noticeable pivot from what they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Max Crosby trade, the fact that the Ravens were willing to trade 2 first-round picks for a player for the first time ever, they were trading 1 first-round pick and they end up trading 2, showed that this year might be a little bit different, that they might approach things a little bit differently. They hand Trey Hendrickson more money in free agency than they ever had to any player outside the organization. So they're willing to do things a little bit differently, maybe act with a little more urgency. So I think there is a possibility that they change their stripes just a little bit, get a little more aggressive in some instances, trade up, use some of those 11 picks to get higher up in draft positioning, and maybe take a few more risks on some players. Jonas, you wrote about on thebanner.com, where people can subscribe $1 for 6 months, about how the Ravens have a list of boxes to check with a lot of their prospects, and its leadership is one, its production, Age is another big one. They try to draft young guys. And I am wondering if a prospect falls to them or a prospect is within range of a trade up, if they're more willing to overlook some of those boxes if they feel like this guy can be a real difference maker. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes. Are you guys prepared to start this thing off?
Yeah, good to go.
All right.
Ready.
Let's start with a slow draft in the first round. We'll speed it up as we go along as we get into the later rounds, but we're going to go as slow as we can here. We have our settings all set. 7 rounds, 11 picks for the Ravens. Let's enter this thing and start the draft. 13 picks before us. Go ahead.
Let's stop it around 10. We can just kind of talk about where we are. Oh,
wow.
Ruben Bain went number 2. Okay, that's fine.
Well, if Ravens fans were hoping Ruben Bain was going to fall to the Ravens in this draft, it's not happening, according to the PFF mock draft simulator. David Bailey off the board as well. Carnell Tate, first wide receiver, taken at 7. Caleb Downs. Feels like a lot of the tier 1 guys are going here. Maui Noah, the tackle from Miami, goes 9. All right. Pause. I'm pausing it at pick 12. So Mekhi Lemon also goes off the board at 11 to the Miami Dolphins. So we've got the Cowboys on the clock at 12. I have it paused. And then we have the Rams on the clock at 13. And then the Ravens at 14. Guys, when you look at the board here, anybody, are we missing anybody that you think we should try to trade up for here?
The big thing for me, like one of my trade scenarios I've been looking at is 11 to Miami, but it's for if one of Bain, Delane, or Carnell Tate fall. Like they're the 3 players who are at positions of need for the Ravens, whereby if they're there, I think you sprint the card in. I think probably the way this board's fallen, I would wait for 14 because trying to think of what the board looks like at this point, but effectively at this point,
it's Fano, Ioane, and Sadiq. I mean, I want to ask Gordon, like, what is when you've gamed this out in your hundreds of mock drafts, as I kind of have myself, what is like the worst case scenario for you? Is it that at 14, it pretty much comes down to, based on the guys who've been most commonly linked to the Ravens, a cook-off between Ioane and Sadiq, and everyone else has been wiped out? Like, is that the quote unquote worst case scenario for you, or is it something else?
Yeah, the worst case scenario for me is this board, and then
way to go, Paul.
And then Ioane and Fano coming off the board in the next 2 picks. I fully see the vision with Kenyon Sadiq. I just don't love that with the 14th overall pick. Like, I don't think he's a fit necessarily as a pure inline tight end, and I think that's what the Ravens are going to look for at tight end in this draft. So if they come off the board here, then I'm probably looking to move down.
I think if you're a Ravens fan, what you're hoping for, and what we might still get in these next 2 picks, is a Proctor to jump, a Freeling to jump, Keldrick Falk to get taken within the first 13 picks. All these guys who have been mocked to teams within that range, but we are not seeing as much chaos perhaps as we could have expected. You never really know who's going to jump from the 20s to the 10s, but for the most part, it's been pretty chalk, just with some guys rearranged in unexpected orders.
Yeah. Let's just hope that it's not Spencer Fano and Venga Ioane in these next 2 picks. I'm going to hit resume here as the Cowboys make their selection at 12, and then the Rams at 13. The Cowboys go with Spencer Fano, and the Rams go with Venga Ioane. Oh, boy. That leaves, as the top-rated players on the board, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State, Jermon McCoy, who is the cornerback from Tennessee, who might not be in consideration for this pick because of lower body injuries, Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon. Those are really the only 3 guys I think you could say. And then Keldrick Falk that you just mentioned, Jonas, is still here, of course. I'm with Gordon here. I'm not as much of Kenyon Sadiq guy as others. I think the Ravens should not be prioritizing tight end in round 1. I don't know if he's that much of a difference-making prospect. I think they would be better off if they had Jordan Tyson, but he's got injury concerns. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, Jordan Tyson might be the best player and the best fit at this point. He's a guy I was forgetting about when we were looking at who was available. I would be curious to see the trade down options here, because I'd love to see if the Jets wanted to move up 2 spots, because I then feel like, yeah, they don't. So
What do you think, Jonas?
it doesn't. I'd probably trade down.
Gordon, how does your wide receiver board stack up? Like, is Tyson third behind Carnell Tate and Lemon? Is he second? Or are you wary about the medicals?
I have him a little bit lower, just purely based on the medicals.
Right? Did you have him like around 40 or something in your consensus?
Yeah, I think I feel like he's in the 20s, but it's kind of on the basis that I as an individual person don't have access to the same medicals that the NFL teams have. Like if the Ravens have access to those medicals and they feel good about them, then I think he's perfectly fine here as the pick. I know a lot of Ravens fans hate the prospect of Keldrick Falk because he is not refined as a pass rusher yet. But not only is he the perfect age that the Ravens like to draft in the first round, he's also a great fit for what Jesse Minter likes. Like, I was talking to James Ogden about this, and he thinks he kicks inside and he plays that like 4-eye technique on a lot of downs for the Ravens. So if this board falls this way and the Ravens couldn't find a trade partner and just went Keldrick Falk, it wouldn't massively surprise me.
I guess we have to do a kind of democratic vote here. I think for me, it sounds like just enough teams are fine with the medicals for Jordan Tyson that they are willing to make him a top 10 pick. Like, rarely now do you see him kind of get past the Giants at number 10. Just to kind of refresh everyone, he had a pretty terrible knee injury at Colorado when he was starting out there. He transferred to Arizona State, misses a year. He breaks his collarbone, which is like fine. You don't really worry too much about that. He had the hamstring injury this past year at Arizona State. Plays through it. Probably not the smartest decision for him, because I think you did see some recurrence there in the pre-draft process, which limited him at his pro day, which limited him, of course, at the combine. But he looks mighty springy during those routes that he posted on his Instagram story of him, running a whip route, running a fade. You don't want to make too much of that, but I don't know. Like, he is not, I think, the answer at X that Carnell Tate would be, because you look at some of the work that's been done on him by Matt Harmon of Reception Perception. He has struggled against press man. He doesn't have huge hands. He might not be the contested catch warrior that you want out there. But then again, like, as we've kind of talked about on previous pods, Gordon, this is an offense that, if it looks a lot like it did under Ben Johnson for Declan Doyle, there aren't going to be a whole lot of opportunities where you just put a guy on an island and ask him to win. It's a lot more condensed splits. It's a lot more, working in the middle of traffic. You can kind of have these options for these two-way goes that Jordan Tyson, I think, would be really good at. It's just a matter of, like, do you want to take a chance on a guy who might miss I think he's missed a third of his games in college so far, and that could obviously continue at the NFL level, or maybe he pulls a Rashad Bateman, where he goes from being among the more unhealthy prospects to one of the healthiest receivers that the Ravens have on this roster. So I think, just based on where we are and based on my hesitation with Kenyon Sadiq, and not really wanting to trade down too much, I think I would be willing to kind of pound the table for him, not extremely forcefully, but I just think that you can find really incredible wide receivers in round one, and that's where you can get a lot of surplus value, as we saw with Zay Flowers. I saw a comparison for Jordan Tyson that I can't get out of my head, that he kind of runs routes like Rashad Bateman did coming out of Minnesota, and that's complimentary, not derogatory, because Rashad Bateman was a great route runner. But I just wonder whether the Ravens would be fine with that quote unquote redundancy at the position.
Yeah, and we have to lean into our experts here, Jonas. And we had Max Toscano on this podcast a few weeks ago to talk about tight ends, and he had Kenyon Sadiq as his tight end 5. He had several tight ends ahead of him. So to me, I think Kenyon Sadiq is kind of off the table here, and it is a Jordan Tyson conversation. The trade options in this mock draft are not great. It is the closest 214 that we could trade back to is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that would be trading back 7 picks to 21. So I think if you're the Ravens, you've been given this 14th overall pick. You should try to come away with it with something close to a top tier prospect or a second tier prospect. And Jordan Tyson, it takes a lot of squinting, but I think he is the closest thing to that. What do you think, Gordon?
Yeah, I think with this board, I would probably be pretty comfortable with Tyson. Like, you are taking a risk with the injury history, but there's no one else who, like, that surplus value thing is very real. And I know a lot of fans don't think wide receiver is a huge need, but this offense is going to be 3 wide receiver sets probably 50% of the time, if not more. Like, they need more help at wide receiver. So I'm good with Jordan Tyson here.
And
right.
Gordon, just to follow up on that, like, I think an important part of the first 2 days of the draft is this front office just telling us like what kind of offense this team is going to major in 2026. Like, you might be a member of the Devontae Walker fan club, but I don't know if he's shown us enough to convince me that this is going to be an 11 personnel heavy team next year. And I don't know if like Durham Smythe and Mark Andrews at this point are high quality enough performers where you can say this is going to reliably be a 12 personnel heavy offense next year. So I think if you can, it would really help to find that kind of playmaker by at least round 4, who you can say, this is going to be the guy who kind of wraps up our identity in terms of the skill position players that we want on the field. Because, you don't have Charlie Kohler anymore. You don't have Patrick Ricard anymore. You can find guys who are like them later in this draft, but it feels like we are a skill position player short in terms of figuring out exactly what this offense is going to look like on a snap to snap basis in 2026.
Yeah, I just mocked the rest of the first round, by the way, and we saw a lot of guys go off the board. We saw, obviously, Keldrick Falk. We saw Peter Woods, the interior defensive lineman from Clemson, go off 4 picks later than the Ravens. Jonas, didn't you hear a nugget from Daniel Jeremiah about Peter Woods and the Ravens?
Yeah, just he did. He made an appearance yesterday, I guess, on Brian Russillo's podcast with Todd McShay, and Russillo's kind of throwing them a bunch of hypotheticals about what the Ravens would do and potentially trading into 2027 for not a not great return. And Daniel Jeremiah kind of randomly threw off the detail that he wouldn't be surprised if Peter Woods were in the mix there at number 14, which would be crazy because like maybe it's, I don't know, the idea that the Ravens could be choosing between Ruben Bain and Peter Woods when they are both guys who have the curse of being kind of short-armed, but Ruben Bain this past year was far more productive and far more impressive than Peter Woods was on a very, very disappointing Clemson team. Obviously, Peter Woods came into this year as like a consensus top 5 prospect. His 2024 tape was great. He's able to kind of move extremely explosive laterally. He can be disruptive for you in the run game, in the pass game, but man, there's a reason why I think most people expect him to kind of go in that 20 to 35 range. And it would be, I think, super, super surprising for the Ravens to veer that far off the consensus board and take Peter Woods with the number 14 overall pick.
Yeah, that would certainly be very surprising. I don't love the fact that we didn't address the trenches in round 1. I hope that we can address the trenches in rounds 2 and 3 as we go along. Guys, as you look at the first round here, are you ready to start the second round? And is there anybody? It's so hard with these big boards. It's tough because we don't have a list of all the guys who are still available. But is there anybody sticking out to you that you think, ooh, this guy is slipping through the cracks? Maybe we should try to trade up for him in round 2.
Gordon, I love to hear your thoughts on this. I think when I've been gaming this out in my head, like what I want from either round 1 or round 2, and this fits into I think why I prefer Spencer Fano over Vega Ioane, is like you want some multiplicity with your draft picks along the offensive line. I think it would be great if you can get a guy who allows you to find the best collection of 5 offensive linemen for the starting unit in 2026. Like we don't know if Emory Jones is going to be the answer at right guard. So I think if you can find a player or players who are able to be functional at different spots, then that gives you a little less rigidity in like how Dwayne Ledford it can approach this draft. So I think for me, like the hope was either getting Spencer Fano in round 1, or if not in round 2, Keelan Rutledge falls to you at 45. Because to me, I know he was like an All-American guard at Georgia Tech, but to say nothing of his nickname being Big Red and him getting married in a pair of jeans, the fact that like people see him as a potential plug and play center, despite him really only having done that, I guess, during this pre-draft process, I think is really intriguing. And that gives you the opportunity, like I said, to be flexible with that interior. You've seen him linked to teams at the back end of this first round, early in the second round. I think he's like around the 50 to 60 range in the consensus. So it's not out of the question at all that he could be there at 45. But to me, that is, I think, given the priorities and the needs on this offense and what you're looking to do with this roster build, getting someone like that who could come in, be a tone setter, but also be a bit of a flexible chess piece would be really interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think finding someone who can be flexible, I think, gives you more room to change things around once you get into round 4 as well. I think if this board goes this way towards the end of the first round, then I'm probably content to sit at 45. And ideally, Rutledge is probably the guy I would want. The other names, Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, who I think is probably just guard only. I'm not as high as on Chase Bisontis as other people are. I know the film guys like the traits and some of the ceiling things with him, but like his grading profile wasn't fantastic, and that worries me a little bit. But in this draft class, like if he is the one of those 3 available, then I'm good there. It's probably similar. I think we'll have a similar discussion at 80 on center and whether or not you're happy waiting, because there's like a group of guys that could be there. But yeah, at this point in round 2, the only way I'm not going offensive line in round 2 here is if at least one of Rutledge, Pregnon, and Bisontis aren't available. As long as at least one of those guys is available, then I think that probably has to be the pick based on how round 1
Yeah, Jonas, can Keelan Rutledge play center, or have people projected him to move over to center?
I don't believe he played there at all at Georgia Tech, but
Okay.
I think he's just a guy who is like a coach's wet dream. To be honest, like very, very smart, very, very tough. I think the quotes out of the Georgia Tech program on him are so raving that you could just imagine him moving there. Like I know you don't want to kind of hand wave the difficulties and the mental strain that moving to center places on these guys, but we've seen the Ravens kind of get around that. Patrick McCary was able to slot in there, despite I think playing primarily left and or right tackle at Cal. I just think that smart guys who love football can make that transition maybe easier than you could from like right tackle to right guard, where it's a little bit different. I just think that like on a snap basis, even though the mental strain is probably greater on you, the physical demands are a little bit less, because rarely are you going head up on a guy like you are at guard or tackle. So I think moving him to center would also maybe mitigate some of his weaknesses that he has physically. Like he's not that great with his reactive athleticism, but he can still be a great run defender and still work those combo blocks and still get out in space. He's a very, very good athlete. So I think someone like Rutledge, if he's available there, would probably be my preference over Bisontis and Pregnon. But if Pregnon is there, it's kind of tough to tell.
All right, let's resume the draft here. Quarterback Ty Simpson goes to the Jets. Pick number 33. Looks like the Jets have found their QB of the future. We are waiting for the Ravens to be back on the clock at pick number 45. As Gordon and Jonas said, I am in agreement that we should be looking offensive line here as we wait for these guys to come off the board. Some centers to keep an eye on. Florida's Jake Slaughter, Auburn's Connor Liu, Iowa's Logan Jones. I think those are three names to keep an eye on day 2, if not at pick number 45. And now we are on the clock, boys. The players available to us, if we scroll down to offensive line, at tackle, Jennings Dunker, a popular name amongst Ravens fans. Jonas.
Mr. Mullet, right?
Yeah. I know he's not red-haired, but he's got great hair. Chase Basantis. Gordon, you said you're not quite as high on the Texas A&M guard?
No, I'm not as high. I mean, the way this is shaken out here, Keelan Rutledge is there, and he would be my pick over him. I would go Basantis in a world where both Pregnon and Rutledge are off the board before here. Dunker is interesting because I think he is probably kicking inside to guard. But of these guys available, you know, and the fascinating thing is if they go offensive line in round 1, then this becomes a spot whereby you're looking wide receiver, you're looking potentially at a cornerback, you're looking at maybe an edge defender. But if it's anything other than offensive line in round 1, then I think you have to take one of the three if they're available in the second round.
I agree.
Gordon, if you go with a center / guard here, how does that change your appetite for adding another interior lineman, and I guess specifically a center late in the draft? Like, are you still looking to grab a pure center in the 4th round, or are you comfortable taking a flyer on a guy in the 6th?
I'm probably still looking at the 4th, but I do think in the 4th there's like another couple of guys who are like players who have versatility across the line, like guys like Brian Parker. Yeah, but Brian Parker and Trey Zune, guys who, you know, you could have a world here whereby you're drafting Keelan Rutledge at guard, but by the time September rolls around, you've got Keelan Rutledge playing center, Emory Jones is starting at right guard, and you have the guy you took in the 4th round as like a backup kind of at both spots. So yeah, that's the way. I still think they need to leave the first 4 rounds of this draft probably with 2 offensive linemen, just given where that's been the last couple of years. But yeah, I think it starts with Keelan Rutledge here at 45.
All right, Jonas gets his wish. Keelan Rutledge is our second
Big
round
red.
pick.
I've become the second most important redhead in Baltimore.
I mean, you lost Cooper Rush from the locker room after the Ravens cut him. That was a big redhead that Jonas, I know you loved having in there. So you get one back according to our mock draft. After we go with Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver, in round 1, we follow it up with Keelan Rutledge in round 2, and we are not on the clock again until round 3. Our next pick is number 80 overall. Guys, I would love to, with this 3rd round pick, address the trenches again. I would love to go offensive line. I would love to go edge rusher, interior defensive line. I think you just got to stay on that because that was the one area that really killed the Ravens the most in 2025.
Gordon, would any of the day 1 / day 2 rangy edge rusher prospects have entertained you there at that number 45 pick? Like, are you interested in a Gabe Akis or a Malachi Lawrence or any of those guys who aren't quite bona fide day 1 prospects, but definitely have that kind of tantalizing potential?
Yeah, I like Akis and I like Zion Young. I really like Malachi Lawrence as a player, but with like what the Ravens already have in Trey Hendrickson and Mike Green, like I think they need someone who is more of the Tavius Robinson mold in terms of being able to set the edge and run defense. So I think Akis and Young are probably better fits there for them at that point. So yeah, that's probably the way I would approach edge if they don't go edge defender in round 1.
All right, we are back on the clock at pick number 80. Guys, we are looking at the board that is topped by, and keep in mind, I'm going to butcher a lot of these names as we get into day 2 and day 3. Dominique Orange is the top-rated prospect on the board, defensive lineman from Iowa State. We could go quarterback. Garrett Nussmeier is sitting there. The LSU signal caller. Guys, are we looking along the lines of scrimmage? Should I narrow it down to that?
There's
Edge rusher.
There's two spots I want to look here. There's a name I've already seen. I'd be curious to see what is available at tight end at this point.
For sure.
Because there is one or two guys who I think could be fits at tight end, but I think they're off the board. Oscar Delp's there.
Oscar Delp is there.
Both of them are there. So I would be between two players here if I was the Ravens. The first is, or three rather. At tight end, either Sam Roush or Oscar Delp, who I think are more traditional inline guys. I think they're both blockers. I think Roush is the better of the two. The other name that's on the board here, though, is Grayson Halton from Oklahoma, who I think is the best true three tech in this draft class. It probably does. I would love to come out of this draft with two tight ends, but generally when I do it, it is taking one of Roush and Delp in the third round. I don't really love a lot of the other guys, and maybe it'll change the way this goes down. So I would be between my draft strategy of taking two tight ends, taking one here and taking one later. But I would probably lean Halton just because I'm really high on him as a player, and I think he is someone who could have like an impact year one, but also is probably the best bet if you are in a world whereby you need a long-term Nnamdi Madubuike replacement. I think Halton is probably the closest to that.
And our next pick isn't until 1:15, so we're going to have to wait a little bit after this pick. I will say Jake Slaughter, the Florida center, is still on the board, and Iowa center Logan Jones is still there. Jonas, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the call for Halton. I think with tight end, like you just have to be really, really sure that a guy that you're grabbing here is a tier or two above who you might be able to get on day three, just because of the kind of opportunity cost proposition. I wanted to throw out a wild card here, just as like someone who kind of fits that mold of someone who plays like a Raven, fills a position of need at that edge spot, but could also give you some versatility as an off-ball linebacker. Gord, do you have any thoughts one way or the other on Jayshon Barham?
I do like him as a player. I very rarely draft him in the third. I very rarely draft him because I think you have to get him in the third round. Yeah. And I've been kind of so set on one of three paths: the tight end path, the Grayson Halton path, or like sometimes I take the center here. I've more just settled in though if like there's four or five guys who could play center, and I think I've more settled into waiting until the fourth round. So I like Barham as a player. Like I have nothing against taking him here. It's just something I kind of rarely do based on the way the build normally goes.
I know it's really. Go ahead,
Go
Jonas.
ahead,
All you.
As I struggle to load this NFL.com Grayson Halton page, I do think that obviously, in the same way that it was very frustrating for Ravens fans to like see third and longs last year, and it's Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman or DeAndre Hopkins on the field for a 3rd and 10 scenario, and it's like, why do you have two tight ends? I think it was a very obvious constraint on this Ravens defense last year that they basically had to play without a 3 tech after Nnamdi went down. Like, it is not a viable path to rushing the passer on early downs or on late downs when you have John Jenkins next to Travis Jones. So I think as good as Travis Jones was last year, he could be even better if he didn't have so much bloody attention on him from teams that had no respect for anyone else in that Ravens pass rush. So obviously it would be, I think, unrealistic to expect Grayson Halton to come in and be even an above average pass rusher in year one. But when you look at his production and what he's given that Oklahoma team, 3 straight years of at least 3.5 sacks. He's forced fumbles. He's gotten his he's had some TFL production. I just think that probably, considering where this uncertainty is with Nnamdi and the questions about Aeneas Peebles and just how quickly the defensive line depth in this draft kind of drops off around pick 100, pick 110. I think Grayson Halton is definitely the smart pick here.
Okay, great. Grayson Halton, I will be happy to select here. 8.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Played 4 seasons in college from Oklahoma. Let's go ahead and take Grayson Halton. I will say I know it's probably very difficult to use just a bunch of round 6 and round 7 picks to package them and get up there, but the amount of talent on the board here that is left, I would love to try to trade back into the beginning of the 4th round or very end of the 3rd round, just because I love some of the guys that are still available between the tight ends and the centers. But I'd like to have my cake and eat it too. Let's take Grayson Halton with that pick. I'm keeping an eye on the 2 centers as well. I'm keeping an eye on some of these tight ends. Guys, if you see anybody that you would like, to stop and trade up for, let me know. Sam Hecht, the center from Kansas State, just went off the board. Oh, Garrett Nussmeier to the Steelers. We let them get their franchise quarterback, guys. So far, the board is playing out okay. None of our top 2 centers and none of those tight ends have been touched.
That'll change quickly, Paul.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, the difficult thing, like when we're at that pick there, glad to get Grayson Halton. You then, it's very difficult to find a world whereby you're able to grab one of the tight ends if you move up. I don't think then the center, because there's Logan Jones off the board. I don't think any of the centers then last to 154. Like you get to a point whereby you're more looking at like Brailsford from Alabama or Pat Coogan from Indiana as your additional one there.
Yeah, Jake Slaughter and Logan Jones just went off.
While we pass the time, let me entertain you guys with a very far off draft hypothetical. I think obviously, and I know saying his name is like Voldemort around Baltimore, but Jason Lockenfora, since leaving 105.7 has started writing for SI, and one of his draft nuggets on who the Ravens could target was just targeting I think your guy Logan Thorson, right? That's his name, the Georgia punter. Don't you really like Brett Thorson? Excuse me, Brett Thorson. Yeah. And that there was an anonymous NFL executive who speculated that he could be a pick not on day 3, but late in the 2nd round. So I guess just prepare yourselves for the possibility that someone really reaches to get the 26-year-old Aussie who seems like a great personality and obviously had a fantastic 2025 with top 5 hang time, right Gordon, for what it would have translated to in the NFL. So I think in this exercise we could probably pretty comfortably get him in the 6th round, but I just wonder if this is a situation where maybe based on how the rest of the NFL feels about the punters in this class, it shouldn't surprise us if the Ravens or another team looks to grab him in round 5 or maybe late in round 4.
Yeah, I would grab him in round 5, purely because it's when they have 4 picks. So it's a little bit similar to the year they had, 6 4th-round draft picks, and you can then go and you balance that out. This board genuinely fell quite terribly. Again, like all of the center prospects, I think have come off the board. And as I was watching it, I was like, all right, cool. Well, all the centers are off the board, but Roush and Delp are still there. And I think they came off in back-to-back picks at 112 and 130.
It did.
Like,
113 and one.
Like, oh, great. Okay, perfect. If you look at the interior of the offensive line here, I think I'm right in saying I think all the centers are off here.
I can't even. Oh, I guess I can do special teams here. Jonas, are we pulling the trigger on punter?
Not pulling the trigger on punter. I don't think he would be. I don't think he is anywhere close to the top of the consensus board.
I mean, the Ravens used a 4th-round pick on a punter the last time. Worked out.
That's true.
Right now, we are on the clock at 1:15. We do have some tight ends available. It's Jolly, right? The North Carolina State tight end.
So, yeah.
Paul, can you see if Zune? Can you filter for offensive tackles?
He came off. He came off the board. Yeah, I saw him come off.
I can also search players if we're looking for somebody specific. Who are you looking for?
We're
Trey Zune the 3rd.
Yeah, there you go.
Eli Raridan, the tight end from Notre Dame. That's certainly somebody I think that we should consider here. Our tight end guru Max Toscano was very high on him.
Yeah, I think just to kind of speak out of turn, I think that would be a fantastic value. I think Nate Tice has him as a top 50, top 60 prospect. Obviously, he has some stiffness. He has some kind of a checkered medical history with, I think, the 2 ACL tears back to back, like high school freshman year at Notre Dame. But he gives you good size at that tight end position. I think he was a 4.6 40 guy. He could line up in line. He could maybe line up as a detached option. I just think that it would probably be silly for us to not try to add a guy with some really high potential at that tight end spot. And I think Raridan, even though he wasn't overly productive at Notre Dame, there aren't really a lot of guys in that tight end class, including Kenyon Sadiq, who were just like 700, 800-yard guys. So I think considering where we are right now with the board, I feel like Raridan is probably the best value for the Ravens at this point.
Yeah,
Cool,
I think I agree. The only other name I'd be interested in here is the guy above him is Max Llewellyn, the edge defender from Iowa, but I would lean Raridan here as well.
All right, Raridan is going to be our selection. So far we have taken, let's see, Jordan Tyson with our first-round pick. We took Keelan Rutledge, the guard from Georgia Tech, with our second-round pick. Grayson Halton, third-round pick, and fourth goes Eli Raridan. So our next pick is at 154. We've got some time to burn here because we are in the 120s. I'm going to speed this up a tiny bit. We are looking. Once you get into day 3, I think you don't want to throw out positions, obviously, positional value, but I do think best player available starts to take over at a certain point. I still don't know if we got our center in this draft, unless you can consider a position change for our second-round pick, Keelan Rutledge. So I would like to get some kind of center. Are there other positions that you guys are looking at? Edge rusher, punter?
Yeah.
Another tight end.
Do the Ravens need? I know the Ravens always double dip at tight end. Do the Ravens need to double dip at tight end? Serious question. They have Mark Andrews under contract. They have Durham Smythe. We just took Eli Raridan. Does it need to be that way, or can they just wait until the undrafted free agency starts?
I think it's very unlikely that you find someone in undrafted free agency who's going to be able to help you. I remember, gosh,
but you could make that same case. Do you need that guy to help you? Like, don't you need more help along the lines of scrimmage?
Durham Smythe's on a 1-year deal. We don't know just how quickly the cliff is going to come for Mark Andrews. It takes some time for these guys to actually get up to speed and be productive NFL tight ends. Like what we saw last year with Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland was easily the exception to the norm in terms of the kind of production curves that you get from these guys. And obviously no one that we're taking on day 2 or day 3, we're not expecting to come in right away and be anywhere close to the breadwinners on an offense. I just think that you have to be a little bit mindful, one, of the depth at that tight end spot, and two, the fact that you want to get some guys in this pipeline to just kind of help Declan Doyle build the kind of offense that he wants to build. Yeah,
but why not wait until after the draft too and sign one of the free agents like David Njoku that's still out there?
Yeah,
I think they will. I think they will add Njoku. It's tough. Would they carry 4 tight ends? Maybe not. There is a guy, like, once we get into the final 3 picks, there is a guy that I love as a late round tight end prospect. Here at this point,
well, we are on.
Yeah.
I think we'd Carson Beck, the Miami quarterback, 154 here.
Paul, they're not coming with it. He's not coming with the Cavender twins. Just all right, settle down, buddy.
He is the top-rated player on the board right now at 154. We could double dip at tight end. We could go lines of scrimmage. The top-rated center right now is Alabama center Parker Brailsford. What do you guys think when you look at the players available here?
I think at center you're probably also going to have Pat Coogan available here. I think he goes in like the 200s.
Yeah, he is available.
187. So I think you can probably wait until the next pick for center. You can. I don't think both of those guys are going to come off the board. I do think Claiborne from Wake Forest. I always struggle to come out of these mock drafts with a running back. And I do think the Ravens, like with Keaton Mitchell departing in free agency, could do with someone who's more of a pure runner as a backup to Derrick Henry. So I think at this point I would probably strongly consider that, and then look at center in the next round.
I don't know how I feel about taking like a running back earlier than round 6. Like I just feel like I know people might be mixed on Rasheen Ali, and obviously the Justice Hill situation and the neck is a little bit worrisome, but I just feel like there's so many more depth positions where you can get guys to actually like get meaningful snaps in 2024. I know obviously that is a Greyhound position where guys wear down, and who knows what even Derrick Henry will look like at this point. Does Claiborne have any special teams value? Because I think if you're drafting a running back at this point, you want a guy who could be a difference maker as a punt returner, kickoff returner.
I'm not sure, actually. I don't know if he does offer anything as a punt or kick returner.
Wake Forest. We're talking about Wake Forest running back Demond Claiborne, senior, 5'9", 188 pounds.
He's got some juice.
He's got a lot of juice, a lot of athleticism. I don't think his production score is particularly high. Last year led his team with 907 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. I also would be hesitant to take a running back here. I think I would be very surprised if in real life we got to this point in the draft where the Ravens have made 4 picks and they hadn't taken an edge rusher. I know we addressed interior defensive line with Grayson Halton, but Jonas, what do you think the Ravens are going to draft? A BDE?
Can you? Yeah, a BDE is a big defensive end to basically complement Trey Hendrickson, a more PG-13 version of what Gordon was talking about earlier. Paul, can you filter for the edge rushers here?
Yes, I can. Edge rushers. Right now we have Western Michigan's Nadame Tucker, Ohio State's Caden Curry.
At this point, it's just like a bunch of tryhards. Can you scroll down?
Logan Fano, is he related to Spencer?
He's the brother.
Wow. Good to know. He's from Utah, edge rusher. George Gums Jr. We're getting some great names here. TJ Guy. That's not a real person. Edge rusher from Michigan. Ben Bell from Virginia Tech. Gordon, is there anybody that you like on this, or is your silence an indication of apathy?
Up at the top of this, the Caden Curry from Ohio State and Tyreek Sapp from Florida, I think are a little bit on the bigger side. I can't specifically remember measurables for them.
I think Curry has about as short arms as Ruben Bain does, but he's just like he just does not stop working.
Yeah.
Motor. We like that in Jesse Minter's defense, right, guys?
We do.
For whatever it's worth, the Beast has Caden Curry as edge rusher 19, which works out to be a 4th or 5th round grade. So I think that would definitely be in the mix here. Again, like we saw Gordon, who was the edge rusher that the Steelers took last year? Jack Sawyer, like who didn't have extremely impressive measurables. There was some speculation about like whether this guy would actually be able to do anything at the NFL level with a shorter frame, not really a whole lot of explosive traits, but he came in and I think he did some okay things for Pittsburgh, considering where he was taken. I think was like day 3 or round 3, round 4, round 5, that area. So Caden Curry being an older guy, coming from that Ohio State defense where you get a pretty good sense of scheme under Matt Patricia. I don't know. I think he could be a productive. He could eventually become a productive player in this defense. He led the Buckeyes last year in pressures, tackles for loss, sacks. He just doesn't have the kind of height, weight, speed attributes that you would look for. But at this point, no edge rusher on the board is going to kind of satisfy that need.
Ohio State edge rusher Caden Curry. Jonas, you mentioned Jack Sawyer. I remember talking about him last year. He ended up getting drafted by the Steelers in the 4th round, played in 17 games, started 1, and registered a sack. So We get another Ohio State single sack. Fourth round pick. I mean, you never know. All right, we are back on the clock. We're going to make these picks pretty quick now because we're in the midst of day 3 here. Our pick in round 5 here is number 22 in the round, number 162 overall. Carson Beck is still there, guys. Are we looking at center yet, or are we saving that?
I think you have to. Brailsford just came off the board 1 pick earlier.
Freaking Steelers!
This entire three times in this draft, the interior guys have come off. So there's 2, and actually, I think probably I would go away from Pat Coogan. Jaeger Burton from Kentucky, I think, is one of the guys that has like the really good short shuttle time, which translates generally pretty well. He's probably the best fit for what the Ravens are going to try and do. So yeah, I'd probably go there.
All right, we have our center.
We got ourselves a Jaeger bomb, Paul.
There it is. Are you going to say that on the podcast when they actually draft him? Kentucky center Jaeger Burton.
Just imagine the NIL deals that dude got in Kentucky, especially with the alcohol industry being there in Kentucky, the bourbon and everything being what it is. But before we move on, any thoughts about us just kind of I forget how many picks do the Ravens have in the
they got 4 in the 5th round and then 1 6th and 2 7ths. Okay.
Should we think about packaging like a 7th and 6th to get I guess whatever would be a late 5th, early 6th? Paul, why don't you kind of
sure. I mean,
look at the trade chart for the Ravens.
I think it's once you get into this area, it can be kind of difficult. Oftentimes you have to trade like a future 5th in order to get there. I don't know if just a collection of of 6th and 7th gets us there. The Ravens have picks right now back to back at 173 and 174, and we are on the clock. I'm cool with keeping these picks and just taking a bunch of dart throws. But if you want to try to package and get up there, I understand, Jonas.
This is where I would take the punter, by the way. Like, I know anytime I've had any interaction with anyone on Twitter at this point is always not taking a punter before the 6th round. And I agree. But if you want to make sure you get the top guy, then the latest you can take them is probably the 5th. So I think you wait to this point and you have 4 5th round picks anyway. I mean, I've seen a lot of the mock drafts have them taking Eckley. They took in a guy who's not even on the board from Elon, I think it is. On a visit, but for me, from what I've seen from these punters, Brett Thorson is comfortably the best guy.
Gordon, can you give us
what happened last year?
Story?
What was that? Sorry.
Can you give us his life story and what makes him such an appealing path?
I mean, a little bit. Like, came to football late. Aussie Rules, I think, is where he came from. I think he was really highly recruited after going through like one of those. They have like kind of kicking academies both in Ireland and Australia, I think, just based on like the nature of their native sports for playing those things. And he got to Georgia. He's obviously now 26, but punters can play into their late 30s, early 40s and beyond. And I think he won the Ray Guy Award last year. So
yeah. He is 1 year younger than Jordan Stout.
I mean, what happened last year where the Ravens waited until the first kicker went off the board before getting their guy? And, you could make a case that the Ravens should have been the first ones to grab the kicker in that instance, instead of Tyler Loop, who was the second kicker off the board. It was the New England Patriots that took Andres Borregales, and I think he ended up having a better season than Tyler Loop. All right, should we take... So who would be... Great names here, by the way. Trey Smack from Florida. I'm always going to bang the table for a Syracuse guy. Jack Stonehouse is there as well. But Gordon, who's our punter of choice?
I would go with Brett Thorson from Georgia.
Right.
His Twitter profile says he is a 4th down quarterback, but I am seeing no conclusive evidence that he is in fact a quarterback of any kind.
All right, well, we're back on the clock again after we took our punter. What position are we looking to address here, guys? Doesn't matter.
Dart throw on a receiver, on a tight end. I think this is probably where you can get some good value from the overlooked tight ends of this bunch. Can you show me who we've taken so far, Paul?
I sure can. we have taken Jordan Tyson with the 14th overall pick, the wide receiver from Arizona State. We took Georgia Tech guard Keelan Rutledge in the second round. Oklahoma defensive lineman Grayson Halton in the third. Tight end from Notre Dame, Eli Raridan in the fourth. And then 3 fifth-round picks so far, taking Ohio State edge rusher Caden Curry, Kentucky center Jaeger Burton, Jaegerbaum, and Georgia punter Brett Thorson.
Gordon, what do you think?
I might just go with the top guy on the board here and take Eric McAllister, who I think he's viewed more of like a fourth-round guy, but then there's some injury stuff that's popped up in the last couple of weeks. I think probably do push him into like the late fifth, maybe even into the sixth round. But I think he has like a little bit of size to him, which helps as well, just given what the Ravens lack at the position.
2 years at Boise State for Eric McAllister, 2 years at TCU, peaked last season with 1,190 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns for TCU in his senior season. Let's go ahead and add to that wide receiver.
According to Dane Brugger, the only offensive player who measured in at the combine at 6'3" or taller and less than 195 pounds.
Okay.
He also has an incredible rap sheet. Character and off-field decision-making will be scrutinized by NFL teams. Arrested in trial. And Paul, did we turn in the card? Because let me.
Oh, we did.
To you. Oh, okay. I guess if they took Mike Green last year, arrested and charged with aggravated assault with deadly weapon and a second misdemeanor count of terroristic threat causing fear of imminent serious bodily injury. March 2024, he pleaded guilty to that and received probation plus mandatory gun safety and anger management courses. He also was arrested for violating conditions of his bond after his urine tested positive for THC. But this close to 420, I'm willing to kind of overlook all that stuff. So I think we're fine. What was that, Gordon?
I may regret that pick. Having made that.
Oh my God. Oh,
hey, man,
that's incredible.
It's fantasy football, not fantasy life decision making.
We did not do our background check on this guy. We did not do our homework. Or maybe we did, and then we stand up there and say we did all our homework on this guy. All right. We are into the sixth round, and we are on the clock again at pick 211.
Ooh.
Anybody sticking out to you guys? The top-rated player on the board is linebacker Trey Moore from Texas.
I am frankly shocked that Kesmark is still available. I think some people are talking about him as a top 100 prospect. He there is some sameness there with Raridan as like the big potential Y tight end, but he was on a team glittering with stars last year for the Buckeyes. Like he was very, very hard to take off the field because he was just so good as that sixth offensive lineman. And so I think if you are preparing for life after Durham Smythe, which is not a sentence that I expected to be saying 3 months ago, I think Kesmark would be a really, really intriguing option there. Just a guy who could basically be to the Ravens what Jackson Haas was to the Bills last year. Just like a total ass kicker, a guy who you can expect to, comfortably manage edge rushers and, blitzers and maybe give you a little bit in the passing game. Like I think probably the best case scenario is he comes in and is close to what Nick Boyle was during his ascendant years in Baltimore. So I think for me, if we are kind of adhering to what Eric DeCosta said last week, where he expects to take multiple tight ends, I think getting Kesmark at this juncture in the draft would be very, very smart.
All right. So we take Ohio State tight end Will Kesmark. I think, if you are going to double dip on tight end, you are kind of assuming maybe that one of them works out and one of them doesn't. As much hesitancy as I have over doing that, I think that's fine with our 6th round pick there. I think the Navy interior defensive lineman Landon Robinson is still there. And once you get into our 2 7th round picks, I'd like to take a local guy and make it kind of fun.
I would like to take an international guy, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. So those guys are not available in this mock draft simulator, right?
We're going to need to find a guy whose name is Bernard, and we can just kind of fudge it.
We just do a creative player.
That's what they should add to mock drafts to add players in. I think that's probably the right move. Probably at this point, there's another guy who I'll probably suggest the Ravens take with the final pick, who is probably going to be more of an undrafted free agent target. But I do think this spot here is the international guy who I think you're talking about, Jonas, is a fascinating prospect at this spot.
Paul,
Who is that, Jonas?
Can you keep scrolling down?
Or what's his name?
He's not going to be listed here, but it's Uar Bernard, who's from the International Player Pathway Program, and it's just, his spider chart, if you mapped it out, would just be incredible. I think he's like 6'4", 240, ran a 4.4 40. Is definitely worth a dart throw. So it looks like a lot of the most intriguing locals are off the board. I think, I believe Eli Heidenreich, the Christian McCaffrey-esque Navy running back slash wide receiver, is no longer there. Landon Robinson is off the board. If I hadn't taken Will Kaczmarek, I think I would have. Gordon, I'm not sure how much you know about Riley Nowakowski, but it seems like he could be a guy who is a Patrick Ricard-esque replacement. Like, he comes over from, I think, Wisconsin to Indiana, and is just a very, very useful fullback / H-back for the Ravens. I think at this point, with us having already spent 2 draft picks on tight ends, I think my appetite is pretty well sated. But that was a guy who I was kind of eyeballing as a potential day 3 option for the Ravens, just kind of giving Declan Doyle a little bit of a matchup problem for teams who aren't used to guys who can be as versatile and as kind of hard-nosed blockers as Nowakowski was for the Hoosiers this past year.
Yeah, I think he would be a fit if they hadn't taken one earlier. The other, less of like a versatile player, but Carson Ryan from BYU, I think is a really good inline tight end option. Yeah. Like, really strong blocker. I think he was better as a receiver than he was given credit for. But in this scenario whereby we've taken 2 tight ends, I don't think we need to go there again. So I think at this point I would probably go with Bernard, your guy.
He's like, so just Paul, just see if there's anyone named Bernard or Bernie, and then we can just
there's Brevard from Texas. That's close. That's probably the closest we're going to get. And he's a defensive interior.
All right. We've got a placeholder, folks. We've got Texas interior defensive lineman Cole Brevard, who is not really himself. And then our final pick.
Paul, I was hoping that he would be like a dorky looking white guy, but
he's not.
He's not.
All right. So, Gordon, who did you want with our last pick? You mentioned it. You teased it.
So maybe we don't even take him because there's probably a better fit. But if you go to the edge defenders, there is a guy who I want to say he's around 2. Yeah, there he is, Michael Heldman from Central Michigan. If you click on his profile a little bit, like, his pass rush win rate is ridiculous. His grades as a pass rusher are insane. He's not the big type of edge defender that they need. But I don't understand why this guy is not getting more hype as someone who is like an earlier in day 3 type of guy, because his production, he had 12 sacks last year. Like, that's a guy who's very, very productive. He's exclusively like more of a outside rusher, but someone who I would very much be looking at in the 7th round, or also as a priority free agent guy. The name who we talked about running back earlier, Jade Knott, is still available at this point, and his story is weird, right? Like, he was very, very good at Cal and went to Oklahoma and just didn't play particularly well, didn't play that much at all this past year. But then he went, and I think he was at some of the All-Star games and looked good again there. So I would probably, between those 2 players, probably makes more sense in the sense they haven't added a running back here. But Heldman is a guy who I think is very, very good.
It could be a deal breaker here, or a deal maker here. He did have a 100-yard kick return touchdown as a sophomore. So if we're looking for special teams value and giving CoCap a little bit of help on day 3 here, then I think Jade Knott could definitely be a viable answer here.
All right, we'll take Jade Knott. It is bizarre, his fall off from 2023 when he was at Cal. He had 1,300 yards in 2023. Last season for Oklahoma, 21 attempts for 68 yards. So he would be kind of a reclamation project, I guess you could say, at running back. But Jaden Ott is going to be our final pick in this draft. That means that we have made all 11 selections. We did not make a single trade in this draft. What is our grade? Do you guys see it on here? Can't be good.
Nope, don't think we have a grade.
Don't think we have a grade. That's okay. We have made all 11 picks. They are, if you are watching here on X, Facebook, or YouTube, Jordan Tyson, Keelan Rutledge, Grayson Halton, Eli Raridan, Caden Curry, Jaeger Burton, Brett Thorson, Eric McAllister, Will Kazmarek, that's right, Cole Brevard, who's not really Cole Brevard, but somebody else, and Caden Ott. So we take wide receiver in the first round. We take a guard in the second round, interior defensive line. We do double dip on tight end in the 4th and 6th round, take another edge rusher in round 5, get our center of the future in round 5, get our punter in round 5. Guys, feels like we checked all the boxes here. How do you feel about it?
I think especially considering the fact that in both round 1 and round 4, the board went terribly in like the picks immediately before us. I think it's worked out really well, all things considered. Like this is a good draft, and especially given the fact that it went against us at a couple of points, it's a pretty good way to come out of it.
Jonas?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I think obviously, you put a disproportionate amount of attention on that first pick because it is Jordan Tyson, and because he is not typically the kind of guy that the Ravens have taken, just because of how clean the medical histories of the guys that they have targeted in the first round have been. But he could be, the best wide receiver in this class, which isn't saying a whole lot because this is not a stacked wide receiver class. But if you are a fan who wants support for Lamar, and I think obviously after what happened last year, that has to be a big priority, then you're getting the guy who can step in and be pretty quickly the Robin to Zay Flowers' Batman. And then you're also getting a really, really impressive run blocker who could potentially have some of those, weaknesses in pass protection mitigated by a move to center. And you're talking about a line from left to right of Ronnie Stanley, John Simpson, Keelan Rutledge, Emory Jones, Roger Rosengarten. That is a very, very athletic group who I think fit well with the kind of zone schemes that we expect from Dwayne Ledford. So I think considering what, the needs for this Ravens team are and how the board fell, I'm pretty happy with who we were able to get on day 3. Obviously a lot of these kind of tight ends are going to be dart throws, but I think you're getting some guys who have some clearly defined athletic traits and some very obvious production as blockers that I think has to be very, very attractive to Jesse Minter and to Declan Doyle.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we are locked in for the draft, and we are going to have another episode for you after the Ravens make their pick at number 14 overall tomorrow night. Gordon, thanks so much for joining us here for another live draft. I know it's been an hour and 20 minutes. We need to let you go and live your life. Where can everybody find your good work, though?
Yeah, it's pretty much social media just now. So you'll find me. It's Gordon NFL on X, and then on both YouTube and Substack, Ravens in 5.
Awesome. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Subscribe to the banner, $1 for 6 months.
Shout out to the Baltimore Banner.
And of course, we have plenty more coverage for you on all of our social channels and on thebanner.com. Thanks so much for joining us here. Thanks to Gordon McGuinness. We will be back with you Thursday night. We'll catch you then.